Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me on this Friday afternoon in the locker room. I'm Alan Locker. Actress and writer Florencia Lozano is here today to discuss her most recent film project, Life After You. Life After You centers around a suburban family struggle with the death of their 19-year-old son following an overdose of heroin that was laced with fentanyl. The movie explores the questions of who and what is responsible for this tragedy and follows their journey to answer these questions as their family unravels from grief, guilt, and anger. The film is inspired by the book Life After You: What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind by Linda Lajterman. Florencia Lozano, along with Sarah T. Schwab, wrote the screenplay to shine a light on the opioid crisis that is on the rise in our country and killing so many individuals. In 2019, nearly 50,000 people in the U.S. died from opioid-involved overdoses. I encourage you all to watch this movie and see Florencia's incredible performance. Life After You is currently available on numerous digital platforms, including Amazon, Apple TV, iTunes, Google Play, Vudu, Fandango, YouTube, and Xbox. Florencia also made her television debut as Tea Delgado on ABC's One Life to Live in January of 1997 and brought her character over to General Hospital in May of 2012. It is my pleasure to welcome to the locker room Florencia Lozano. Hey there.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much. You are so welcome. What a impactful and powerful film performance, as I mentioned. What was the genesis of this project and how did you get involved?
So Charlene Giannetti, who is a journalist, uh, knew my acting work, and she had interviewed for her blog, Woman Around Town, Linda Lajterman, who, as you mentioned, Linda wrote the book Life After You: What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind. And Charlene was so rocked by what Linda had written. And remember, Charlene had never produced a film, written a film. She'd never been involved in film or
Um,
production. And she was on fire about getting Linda's story out. And she thought, you know what? If we make a movie, then in addition to people reading the book, they'll be able to sit down, see a movie, and hear her story. I did not know Charlene. I met her and was so taken by her mission. And so I immediately I always say, there was no way I could turn her down.
hmm,
I was honored that she wanted me to play Linda. And after I met Linda, Linda said some things that really sparked me imaginatively as a writer, as a storyteller, because I'm also a playwright and I'm starting to write for screen. And this was my first screenplay. I asked Charlene. I said, "Can I try writing this with the director?" So Sarah, who directed this screenplay, and I. Jumping off from some of the things Linda had said about her relationship to her son before and after his death, inspired us to co-write the screenplay, which Charlene was totally open to.
hmm, incredible. I mean, can you talk about meeting Linda? I mean,
So, I've never played someone who is a real person. Actually, that's not true. In college, I did a play called Execution of Justice, where I played a district attorney. Um, but besides that, I had never felt the responsibility, especially with a story like this, which is basically the worst day of Linda's life and her whole family, right? Tito Latterman, who's Danny's father. Danny is Linda and Tito's son. who, as you said, died of a heroin overdose that had been laced with fentanyl in his childhood bedroom. They found him there. So it's the story of their whole family, because
I have chills again, Florencia, just thinking of the visuals in the film from that.
oh wow, I think that's a good thing, unfortunately, because it is the reality for so many people. I just posted about this, and for the first time, we wrote a story about the fentanyl epidemic as opposed to the opioid epidemic, because now we thought the opioid epidemic was bad, and it is. But there was an article in the Wall Street Journal earlier this week and in the Times yesterday. The fact fentanyl now being part of the equation has blown this whole problem to another level. It's so much more dangerous than heroin. It's being mixed with methamphetamines, it's with cocaine. And unfortunately, our film is more urgent today than it was when Danny died in 2014.
It's crazy. Well, I will share that a fan, Mary Beth, reached out to me to share that she lost her 33-year-old daughter. I believe it was a daughter in February to addiction that started with a knee injury, and thanks to the pharma industry, quickly led to heroin. And she was looking forward to watching our interview, but maybe not today. But she said when she's ready. But really was appreciative that we were having the conversation.
I am so sorry for her loss. Thank you for sharing that with me. And I would encourage anyone to move at their own pace with the movie, with seeing the movie. It is impactful, I think, and I know, because the story itself is devastating. There's just few things, if anything, worse than losing your child. But losing any member of your family, a friend, and really, there's very few people these days who haven't lost someone to this. So our mission with this film was to create the space to have conversations around it, to acknowledge, this is very, very real and needs to be addressed without shame. There's so much stigma around addiction and drug use, and this is a public health issue. Addiction is an illness, and as you meant, as you referred to, the big pharma was a huge part. We were lied to. In my mind, it is the crime of the 21st century that what big pharma perpetrated on us, and it was about corporate greed, and it got so many people addicted to opioids when they should never have been prescribed in the first place for pain.
It's crazy. Is there something you learned from Linda that has stuck with you?
There's many things. There's many, many things. I always say this in response to that question, and it is the biggest thing I learned, which is the opposite of addiction is community, is connection. Addiction and shame breed in isolation, which unfortunately was what we just went through with this pandemic. So a lot of people were left without a safety net. It's hard enough when your brain changes after you become addicted to opioids, which are an incredibly strong drug that changes your chemistry, and it's pretty much beyond your control, your body's need for that substance, which is why there's all sorts of medical treatments now, which are being given to people I'm going to mispronounce their names, but they're basically in the medical treatment facilities. My personal opinion, though I'm no scientist, is that they need to be readily available in more facilities, because they seem to really be helping people. Drugs that wean people off of the opioids. Naloxone, and something else that starts with a B. And I'm really sorry that I can't remember the name of it.
It's okay. It's so important that everyone really sees your film for the impact that this really has on everybody. Did you watch Dope Sick?
I sure did. And I would recommend everybody watch that.
It's for a different, right. It's correct. Like, your film is really the impact on the family, but seeing what big pharma did to, young children, old people, every age in between, really tragic.
Yes. And, so I've talked to people about a Dope Sick who haven't seen it, and they say, well, the doctors knew. Well, Michael Keaton plays a doctor who, yes, he had some doubts, but it was so relentless. The lobbying by big pharma. No, we've done tests. They faked.
The ads were fake. Everything was fake.
They were paid. These people who sold to doctors were given incentives to not tell the truth, and so there were doctors themselves who became addicted. It was a huge crime that was perpetrated. And watching how it happened, everything from the FDA, how they got it through the FDA, like, people need to see Dope Sick to understand all of the ways that this crime was perpetrated.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love that you held talkbacks after screenings of the film in an effort to open up and extend the conversation with into the community and with specialists. What was that like? I mean, you must have met some incredible people who were affected by this.
It was my favorite part of going to see the screenings, was afterwards the courage that people had in coming forth and sharing their personal stories. It's rare to be in a public space where people allow themselves to be vulnerable and to share their pain for the greater good. And that's why I'm an actor. That's why I'm a writer, because I want to be in those rooms where we feel our common humanity. What we have in common is so much greater than what we don't. And a lot of issues came up, issues that intersected with everything from healthcare in this country, right? And how that really needs to be retooled. So medical care is a right and not a privilege, and not something that, because you're wealthy or because you're not wealthy, you have access to it or you don't. We ran into, or we spoke to a lot of people who wanted to know, like, well, what can they do when their insurance doesn't pay for rehab, when it doesn't, when the drugs that they need are too expensive? Questions we don't have answers for, but conversations that, these are the questions that need to be asked.
Conversations that are so important.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Did working on this project inspire you to want to tackle more stories of this nature?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like the world is now in a challenging place, and there's so much on the table that needs to be addressed, both politically and personally. The issues that are coming up are connected to human beings that are going through their lives. So as a storyteller, I want to focus on the implications on individuals. What is your story, and how does telling your story encourage someone else to share their story? Again, shame stops us so much of the time. Fear, I'm alone in this. No one else has done this horrible thing that I did. No one else has made the bad decisions that I've made. We have all screwed up. That's part of the human condition. We make
Yeah.
mistakes, and it's okay. You know, forgiveness and compassion and understanding, those are the things we need to encourage in ourselves and in each other. The ability to listen and be present for someone else's experience.
So true. So true. Really true. Crazy. Your parents immigrated from Argentina at 19 and 26. What do you think you and your two sisters learned from them? And I love Argentina.
Wow. Thank you. So, you know, my parents, I'm so grateful to them. They really are the immigrant. Well, they're not the immigrant story. There's so much variation in each immigrant story, but they did come here for my father's dream to study here and to work here, but also because they wanted to be in a country of great opportunity. And it's very important to me to keep this country that a land of great opportunity, a land of freedom, a land of equality. And that is a mythology that is in sharp contrast to the reality of many, many people. But I feel very invested in working towards that vision. My parents also bugged us to speak Spanish, you know, and as a teenager, I felt different. I didn't want to speak Spanish. I think there was a certain amount of shame of being different, you know, having different rituals than the people that I lived around. We didn't live around many Latinos. So, and now I'm so grateful for the experience that I do speak Spanish. And something about speaking,
Did you learn it then when they encouraged it?
I learned it then because
That's right.
they were relentless about it. And I'm grateful for that experience of being able to understand a different language. You know, that part of your brain that goes, you know, these people, they sound different. They have a different rhythm. They have a different music. And I can live in that place, and I can live in this place. Allows me to access, and I'm so grateful for that. And I encourage people to lean into that experience of opening yourself to different ways of being in the world, whether it's language, whether it's music, whether it's travel. To, you know, the world is big, and it's got so many riches, and especially those places that you feel like, wow, those people are so different from me. You know, really, we're not that different.
Mm-hmm.
We all want to live. We all want our children to have healthy lives. Um, so connection is what my parents taught me by coming to this country and connecting me to Argentina and to a whole different world.
My parents immigrated from Holland, and sadly, I didn't learn the language. You know, I wish I spoke Dutch today, but you were very smart to do so.
Oh, no worries.
But for the same reason, you know, I mean, they spoke Dutch, you know, when I was young all the time, but I had no desire.
Yes.
Um, you grew up in New Jersey, correct?
I was born in Jersey. I actually grew up outside of Boston.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh. I
What
grew up
what what
thinking,
was that like?
well, I loved it. I grew up thinking most people were Jewish because there were so many Jews around. And I was shocked when I left Newton and I realized, oh, there's such a thing as anti-Semitism. Like
Mm.
I never even knew that existed. So that gave me sort of a window on like, oh, geez, where you come from really does create your reality. Um, uh, the place I grew up had a very strong emphasis on education. That's why my parents moved to Newton, is because we had a good public school, a really great public school system. And so I sort of took it for granted that school is great and it's free, which
Hmm.
is so not the case. Um,
So interesting that you mentioned Newton and growing up in a Jewish community, because I am Jewish and didn't grow up in a very Jewish community, and my parents were Holocaust survivors.
oh, wow.
So
Wow.
I didn't. It took me much later in life to fully grasp what they had gone through. And as you were talking about our experiences and sharing them, I have, now that I have this show through this platform, I've taken to doing shows about the rise of anti-Semitism because my parents are no longer here, and without the people who saved their lives, you and I would not be having this conversation. So it's, you know
Absolutely.
I realize the impact of that story, and me sharing it to hopefully encourage others that, God forbid, we're in scary times. Look at what's happening in the Ukraine. People, fleeing their country and needing a place of refuge. Hopefully, there are people opening their doors like the people did for my parents.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
the what you said is so important about us sharing our stories.
Yes. Well, when I was growing up in Newton, there was a dirty war going on in my parents' home country. There was 20,000 people were disappeared. I actually wrote a play about it called Underneath My Bed. Um, but I was hearing my father talk about there was fascism in Argentina. There was a military dictatorship.
Yeah.
They would take people from the street in Ford Falcons. They would bring them to police stations that were, a block from where they lived, and they would torture them and kill them. So from a very early age, I was aware that like, oh, that's something that human beings do to each other. I don't know how that happens, but it happens, and it could happen to you. It could happen to me. And there is no difference, not only between us and the victims, but between us and the oppressors, right? I mean, we all want to say, oh, I would never be that person who would torture. I would never, I mean, of course, we never think of ourselves that way. But fascism is something that creeps up slowly. And it is something that needs to be rooted out and studied because it's a very real threat.
Sad, it's scary. It's scary. Justin said, if only Florencia could teach us all Spanish. and, and I wanted to read what Joe wrote. Joe said, hi, Florencia. I remember you being so nice to me when I was an extra on One Life to Live, and I just saw your movie and loved it.
Oh.
You went to Cornell for your bachelor's and Master of Fine Arts from NYU. What do you think those both experiences taught you?
I actually transferred from Cornell to Brown.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I found Cornell to be really stressful. Like I couldn't deal with the anxiety. So I went to Brown, which was a lot more. They let you do your own thing there, which is what I needed. I want to recognize my incredible privilege to have had that opportunity. Again, my parents really pushed us to go to good schools. They didn't have a lot of money, but I did, I had the advantage of going to a great public school, getting financial aid, having mentors, being in a culture where college was an expectation. Um, so I am really grateful for that. Really, really grateful. And, what was nurtured in me was, read everything you possibly can. The world is your oyster when you read books, when
Mhm.
you get to have conversations about, philosophy. And so, that is my wish for anyone and everyone, is that they realize that their own mind is an entry point to freedom. No matter your circumstances, although I don't mean to underestimate what it means to have circumstances where you don't have books, right? You don't even have food, right? Those things are all true. And yet the life of the mind is one that you need to personally invest in and make it your business to be curious about the world, because then your mind is free.
Hmm.
um
I have to share, Maybeth is sitting at a coffee shop at Brown right now.
oh my
and uh,
god.
and Tony says that his mother worked for the Brown bookstore for 27 years.
Oh
That's
wow.
a small world. Small world.
Oh my god, I loved Brown. I really loved the freedom, the people that were there, the community. um but even if you don't go to a school, or a school with that kind of name, there are people around you who can inspire, and who with whom you can commune and create work and create what you need in terms of conversation, inspiration, action. um so I encourage people to do that.
Who inspired you at Brown or NYU?
I actually so I was unhappy at Cornell, and a friend of mine, Jovi Wan, knew someone called Joel De La Fuente, who just happened to be going to Brown. So he's like, "Let's go and check out their fall." Our fall break, we went there, and there were all of these students. Maria Stryer, who's a producer in New York. I'm actually going to be doing a play with her theater company next week. Maria Stryer, Meg McCary, Vani Kasarjian, Kate Hampton. There were all of these amazing actors and teachers. Um, I can't believe I can't remember her name now. But she was a teacher at Brown who actually published a book of monologues that a bunch of us had written,
Oh,
monologues for
wow.
women by women. And that was amazing. As a college student, to get to see my work published, like, I am so grateful to her.
When did you start writing?
I wrote as a kid. I wrote short stories, fiction, when I was a girl. And that was always such a form of escape for me, and entry. Like the things that I felt like I couldn't say in life, the ideas I felt like I couldn't explore because they were too dangerous, or they would mean I was a bad person, or they were somehow dirty, uh, or too sexual, or too. I would I would write them down, and I would feel such great relief and release and joy to get to create my own world in which I could ask questions I was curious about. I could visit places that I found calmed me. I was very anxious as a girl. I had a panic disorder. And so writing and acting were kind of saved my life.
Tori Herring Smith.
Corey Harris Smith! Oh my God! Oh my God! I'm so glad.
Stephen shared that. Stephen shared that. He
Tori
must have
Herring
looked.
Smith. Tori Herring Smith. I'm so
I,
glad to get a chance to thank her. That she was huge.
I
She
love that.
she had a play called The Production of New Plays, and we had to write a play. It was the first play I ever wrote. I was
Wow.
terrified. I mean, I actually, when I wrote that play, I was like, people are going to discover that I'm a horrible person, that like I'm going to get kicked out of class. Like there was so much shame. There was so much self-hatred that came up. And when this guy in my class, Jason Newith, I believe that was his name, he chose my play to direct. I was like, oh my God. I hid under a table during the production of the play. I literally hid under a table and I heard the audience laughing. And I will never forget the feeling of like something that I had been so ashamed of, other people related to, and it brought them joy. And to take what I went through and bring it out into the light and have it be transformed into comedy, I was hooked. I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. If this is
That validation is so important for
thank
somebody
you.
who is, exploring the arts and, being vulnerable, and to get that is
Yes,
powerful.
yes, yes. It was basically a story about having lost my virginity and having been so drunk that I missed the whole thing, and being afraid that I was pregnant. There was so much shame tied up in it. And so many people related, you
Well,
know.
I'm sure. Uh, you were in college.
Yeah.
That's you're sharing that while you're in college. I'm sure many people. You
Yeah.
know.
And suddenly I wasn't alone. Suddenly I was seen and I was appreciated and I was embraced and people were laughing. And that was a game changer for me. So, and that was Tori Herring Smith's class. So if it hadn't been for her, I don't know that I would have ever realized, oh, I can write plays.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. We're gonna dive into One Life to Live, but I want to read what Eric wrote. He says, "I loved Florencia so much when I wrote my podcast soap Lust for Life. I named a character after her, La Condesa Florencia Longoria di Genova, a Countess of Mallorca, Spain." that is a,
Wow.
that is a fabulous name.
Really?
That is a fabulous name. What do you remember about your audition and screen test for Taya?
So I'll tell you this right off the bat. I didn't get it the first time I auditioned. I did not get it. So there was a casting director, Sonia Nikor, who worked for ABC. And it's funny talking to you. It's like there were so many people along the way. There were so many people who picked me up, who whispered in my ear, who pushed me, who just like Tori, like you will write a play. I did not want to. Sonia, after
I
they
hope people watching or listening to that, because we all have the power to do that for somebody.
we all have the power, no matter our level of education, no matter our circumstances, we have the power to listen to someone else and say, hey, what you just said, that was really beautiful. That was really important. Sing that, write that down. That matters. I see you. I care. We're going to go to a museum. I want to hear your story. Like kids, especially, they need that. They need that to grow. It's like a little seed in the dirt. They need water. They need sun. They need love so that they can blossom. People
Yeah.
need to know that they matter and that what they have to offer is valuable.
Mhm.
Um,
So you didn't get it the first time, but did somebody else get it, or they just
I didn't get it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was coming out of theater school. I didn't know how to put on hair, put on makeup, do my hair. I didn't know what to wear. I didn't know how to test for a camera. So Sonia Nikor said, we're going to try this again. I want you to come in with your outfits. She took me under her wing. She knew I could act, but she needed to get me to the place where I could be ready for the screen test. So my agent took me to a makeup place and I bought makeup, all of those things that now they seem like, oh yeah, but I didn't know any of that. I didn't know any of it.
I feel like today there wouldn't be that level of effort because of how fast the entire industry, and I don't mean daytime, that people would, I feel like people would just move on to the next person. I don't know that people would have that, compassion and empathy to help you out. I hope they do, but I just feel like we are all just so fast paced that
Yes.
taking the time to do that for you is just amazing.
It really is. Yeah, so I got it the second time, and I grew a lot on that soap. I learned how to act in front of the camera on that soap opera.
Who did you screen test with?
Frank Valentini, Susan Gammy, who is a costume designer, brilliant costume designer. Who was the, oh my gosh, who was the executive producer? It was
In 97.
yeah, it was a man, I think. Was it a man?
Gary.
Gary, yeah, what was his last name?
One of the fans will tell me. I can't think off the top of my
Yeah.
head.
I think it was Gary. I'm bad.
Do you remember that first day walking on set? Gary Tomlin.
I believe Gary was there. I remember this. I remember a couple weeks in, I think they do this on a lot of soaps. They give you a lot of material to see, can you do this? Because there are not, some actors can't. Some actors cannot memorize that amount. And it's sort of, a test. I felt like I was being tested, before they're going to invest in my character. They're going to see, as an actor, does she have the muscles necessary for this form? And it's not to say that you're not a good actor if you can't do soaps. That is not the case at all. But you do need to have certain muscles that are very strong. And one of them is memorizing, and the other one is, being able to basically get up to bat and start swinging, right? That's how I always think about it. And they gave me a lot of material, and I was literally wandering around on set behind the sets, and I was freaking out. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day. I was terrified. And one of the directors, Bruce, oh my gosh, what was his last name? Someone will remember. Bruce, who was such a doll. He had the most beautiful energy. He was always laughing. He found me, and he put his arm around me, and he looked me in the eye, and he's like, you can do this. You can do this. Take it one scene at a time. We will help you. And I did. I got through that day, and then I got through the next day. But again, it's those moments where people come to the rescue.
Yeah. I mean, that, to take the time to say that.
Yes. Makes
the biggest difference.
And to have a sense of humor, right? To realize this woman needs to know everything's going to be okay. Oftentimes that's what we need to tell each other. Even if we don't believe it, is we need to lie and say, hey.
Some Bruce Cooperman, is that the name?
Bruce Cooperman. Exactly.
And you were paired out of the gate with Roger, right? I know you worked with both Trevor and Roger.
Yes.
I mean, was that intimidating? I mean, did you know One Life to Live before you got there?
I didn't. I didn't. I had watched General Hospital as a kid. I mean, who didn't? I mean, and then to get to go to General
Yeah, we're gonna get there because now I'm more
Hospital, that was
excited.
crazy. That was great. I don't live in Los Angeles, so Los Angeles is palm trees and sun. I'm driving in a car. I drive up to the set, and I was like, this is one of those moments in your life where you're like, this cannot be happening. It's insane. But working with Roger and Trevor was a blast, and it was an honor. Was I intimidated? I was.
Well, you probably weren't. I mean, if you didn't know the show,
I didn't
yeah,
know the
it,
history. And you know what? I'm really glad
yeah.
I didn't like. People told me that when I first went on, and I didn't know how it worked in terms of like how they're going to pair you with someone. I didn't know when I was being, I guess, paired with Roger to see the Todd and Taya stuff. I didn't know that that's what was happening, and I heard that there were a lot of people online who were, loved Cassie DePaiva, as do I. And they were like, oh, she's encroaching on the Blair Todd thing. I had no idea about any of that. So I was focusing
It's
on,
better to be,
oh yeah.
naive about it.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Coming between a powerful soap couple can be daunting.
And I had
If you
no idea.
know, right?
I'm grateful for that ignorance because that didn't register.
It's good. Yeah, it makes it. You know what? You're just doing the work, which
Yeah.
makes people, love the story. I mean, that's the whole part of, coming between any couple is to drive story. So, if they're reacting, then you're doing your job.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's
Exactly.
fantastic. And working with my pal Cassie, what was,
I adore Cassie DePaiva so much. Um, yes, when you showed that, I was like, oh my God, that brought me back because I think she threw me out. No, I think I tossed her out a window that time because she had thrown me out a window, I believe. Yes, she threw me out a window when I like first got there, and then I got to throw her out a window. And
hope
she's
no one's listening to us. I threw her out the window. She threw me out the window.
it's a soap, we get to do
Yeah.
these things. Where else do you get to do these things? It was, God, that was so fun. And a lot, the stunt double actually went out this window that crashed, and there were all these pads, and then like just as an actor kind of imagining what that would be, uh, to so we had a fight, of course, and then and I pushed her, and then she fell out this window, and imagining the terror of seeing that was, that's when it was really fun that was really fun to get to play that high drama, that melodrama, that sometimes is spoken of disparagingly, but
Hmm.
actually is, that's the stuff of Greek tragedy. And it's the stuff that happens in life. Sometimes emotions are that big. Sometimes, God forbid, the tragic things happen. Someone runs over your beloved, you find out that your husband cheated on you. And the emotions that you experience in that moment cannot be predicted. Your body goes into a state of life or death, life or death, that is really fun to get to play as an actor. But getting back to Cassie, Cassie is so easy. She's so lighthearted. She's so fun. She's so kind. That our energies really worked well together. She just had my back, and I like to think I had hers. she's a lot to fun. She's a lot of fun to hang out with, and she made me feel like everything is going to be fine, honey. Everything is going to be okay, and I needed that.
I love that.
Yeah,
Love that. You said earlier you learned so much. Can you articulate, what you learned working on that set?
I can tell you very specifically, especially now that I'm not on it anymore, and I audition a lot. I do episodic stuff. I'm doing film now. The thing about a soap is it's so hard. I don't think people realize we do a
One
show.
of the hardest things.
I mean, we do a show a day. So, we did like 60 pages a day, 70 pages a day. And, let's talk about the hair and makeup people, what they have to do. On a day where we're shooting a gala, right? Where everybody has these incredible outfits and this amazing makeup and these hairdos that's why a lot of people tune in is to see the beauty of this parallel reality. So Wayne Bellotti, who's one of my dear friends who does hair, he lived for those days where he would have 12 women in his chair and he would create these
Oh,
hair sculptures,
yeah.
and he was working hard for hours and hours and hours, and we fed off that energy of like, we're going in today and we're not going to stop. It's going to be a really long day. And now on films, when people are like, oh my God, we have 6 pages today and we have to do this. It's like, guys, we got this. Don't, everybody relax. We're going to figure out how to do it because we have to.
But it's interesting though, because not everyone has your experience. So if if somebody gets their first part as a film,
Yeah.
they think 6 pages is probably a lot.
Yes.
And that's what's so tragic about the demise of soaps, especially in New York City. What the actors who, live in this East Coast area miss out on the opportunity to have that
Yes.
that learning of, possibility of a daytime show in New York.
It is boot camp. There is no better training for me. I mean, that was my experience, because when you do something that hard, anything else, it doesn't feel as daunting.
Had you any inclination when you walked in to Landview how difficult, it would be?
I mean, I knew that it would be a lot of material, but I didn't realize exactly what it meant every day after day after day after day.
Put it
That's
in today, let it out tonight to get the next. I mean, I applaud you, all of you, because it's something that,
yeah.
I wish it was a great, Soap Dish was a movie, but I wish it was a great documentary that really
Oh,
followed and showed the intensity of what, because it really is like you described, there is nothing like it.
yeah.
There
Yeah.
is. What are some of your favorite memories?
Well, I'll tell you real fast. Another thing I did learn, which I had to learn the hard way, and is something I didn't know going in. I had to learn how to let go of my ego, because coming from theater training school, right? I got to rehearse something for
Mm-hmm.
weeks, 4 weeks. I got to rehearse a play. So with soaps, there are many times where you're like, oh my God, no, we need to do that scene again. I forgot that whole speech, and it's time to move on. And the first couple months, I was literally like, I would come downstairs and I would be like shell shocked. I would be like, I can't believe that's going out on TV, that people are going to watch that, because it wasn't what I wanted to do. It wasn't the scene wasn't what I wanted to have done. I wanted 4 more chances at it. I wanted, but there's no time for that.
Yeah.
So it lets you go, all right, I'm going to give it away. I'm going to give it away. Just let it go. Do the best you can. And then accept the fact that, yes, there are times where you'll look up at the TV and think, oh my God.
Well, that must have, taught you really, like you said, it definitely taught you to let go, but it must have taught you to trust yourself too.
Yes. That's what I was talking about, getting up to bat. It gave me the very strong muscles of like, all right, here are the things I need going into this scene to absolutely know. And I'm going to trust myself. And that's where the other actors come into play, because that is something you don't get on in other mediums. You get to play with these people over months and years and build up an intimacy, a relationship with the actor / character, so you can start to really have fun and really improv and just trust that, like, I know the lines, you know the lines, we know what happens in the scene. So let's make this about what's going on between us. Yeah,
I love it. Love it. Favorite memories or anything that stands out?
So the week we went live.
Sweat stains.
The week we went live. It was so beautiful, though, because we were all grumbling around. We were all stressing out. But that week we came together. It was like we were a repertory theater company, like noises off, like hanging together for dear life. And everybody's, we were like, soldiers in a platoon. Like, we needed to be there for each other and pass the ball. And we watched each other. And the more, we watched each other step up to the diving board and jump off. And that gave the next person the courage to do the same thing.
I love the description of that. That's great.
And
it's like the relay race, hand off the baton.
Yes. And Bob Woods, God bless him. I remember him because we were all on the stage together, and the camera would go from set to set, right? From scene to scene. And I remember him when we finished the last, when my set finished, I came out and I was like, oh God, I was so relieved. And Bob Woods was there and he gave me a big thumbs up, and I was just like, I felt like I was on a team, you know what I mean? Like I came in the dugout and they gave me high fives. Like, they were watching, they had my back, they were rooting for me, and we were doing this together. I'll never forget that image of him.
That's awesome. He's a good guy. He's a
great guy.
I must ask, did you get to work with Jerry Verdoorn?
I did get to work with Jerry.
What anything you remember about Jerry?
The grace. He had so much grace, elegance, dignity. He had a light touch, and I always felt grounded when I was near him in the makeup room, when we passed in the hall, when we were on set together. I was like, this is a classy human being.
Amen. 150%.
He's a class act.
Yep. Head to toe. 100%. So how did you learn that they wanted Taya to come over to General Hospital, and being a fan, what was that reaction?
I still can't believe that happened. Oh my gosh. Frank Valentini, who's doing such an amazing job over there. I mean,
He works his butt off.
he works so hard, and he does it looking so damn good. I mean, he's always dressed to the nine. I don't know how that man does it. He loves soap operas so much. He loves the medium. He loves the actors. He's a true leader. And I was so grateful for his invitation to come to General Hospital, and my God, I was beyond excited to work with the actors I had watched. Like, that blew my mind.
Who was the first one you had the opportunity to work with?
Robin Matson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. That was a trip, because she kidnapped my child.
Of course. Of course.
But I loved her as a kid. I mean, I just was so into her. And to get to do scenes with her was really surreal.
Was she the first person you met at GH, or like did you walk in the studio and see Jackie Zeman or Kim Schrein? You know, like, do you remember walking in the building for the first time?
I remember walking in the building for the first time, and it's out on this lot, right? Kind of in the middle of nowhere. And again, it's like the sun is shining. I felt like I was in this weird, like, heavenly palace. I was like, wow, General freaking Hospital. I had met, and I'm really bad with names here, so remind me. Kim, what was Kim?
Kin Schreiner, who plays
Kin Schreiner, who plays
Scotty.
Right, Scotty. I no, I hadn't met him. I thought you were talking about the woman who was the amazing actress on another New York soap, not another, no, As the World Turns. Who was
Maura West?
No. I'm sorry, Guiding Light.
Cynthia Watros?
No, Kim.
Laura Wright, who plays Carly on the show?
Not
Was Kim Zimmer on the show?
Kim Zimmer.
Oh, she was on General Hospital at that time.
No, Kim Zimmer came on One Life to Live.
Yes, as Echo.
Kim Zimmer came on One Life to Live, and man, she was so much fun. I mean, she's one of those women who I just love to be around because she's
the life of the party.
She sets the tone. You know, she makes me relax because she's a broad. You know what I mean?
Yes, she is.
She's unapologetic. She's
like you. I grew up on Kim Zimmer. So, and then was a fan, and then got to be friends and got to work on the show. So she's Mama Zim. She is something.
She is just, and then let's talk about Linda Dano. I mean, these women who I got to share space with really were role models for me, because they were doing this a little before I was, and it wasn't easy to be as multifaceted as their characters were, as unapologetically flawed, as and let's also talk about the fact that beauty is such a big part of the daytime world. And so they were constantly under the scrutiny of, like, what does their body look like? What does their face look like? There's a lot that goes into looking the way we did on a soap opera. And there are so many people involved in that. And they negotiated all of that with humor, with acceptance, with flair, with an embracing the diva status without arrogance.
True, really true.
And I loved being around that. I learned a lot from that.
I bet. I mean, yeah, I think there's no way you can't, right?
Yes. And
There's no
I
way.
mean, let's talk about Erica Slezak too, like a goddess.
She
Wow.
is. I agree. And like you said, a class act. Before I let you go, is there something you wish someone had told you before you ventured into this crazy business?
Oh, love yourself
Mhm.
unconditionally, through the good times and the bad, through the mistakes, through the rejections, through the self hatred, through the self doubt, through all of it. Love yourself in a deep, connected way, and in a way that has nothing to do with your looks, your intellect, your abilities, but the fact that you are here on this planet means you are loved, and your job is to love yourself.
Amen to that. Damon Jacob says, I love you, Flo.
Oh, I
Mhm.
adore that. Tell Damon, okay? Damon, I listen, in another world, you and I are married.
I think you like kind of the opposite things.
I know. I'm just a parallel
Okay.
universe. A
Parallel
very
universe in a
parallel.
soap opera.
Exactly.
It is such a delight to meet you and talk to you.
Oh, likewise, Alan. Thank you.
Continued success. And really, everybody, please go see Life After You. Like I said, it's available on numerous digital platforms: Amazon, Apple, iTunes. Do a search, you'll find it. We all must do our part to end this craziness.
Yes. I feel bad I didn't mention the glorious Robin Strasser, E. Smith. There are so many incredible soap women, actresses, humans. Thank you for having me.
Right. The New York soaps had kick ass women on every one of them who had talent
Yeah.
out the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too, Alan. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Bye
Thank
bye. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Florencia Lozano, for joining me today. Don't miss next Wednesday's show when All My Children's Taylor Miller joins me live right here. I hope you all have a great weekend. Everybody, please stay safe, and I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye, everybody.